Take a deep breath. Now imagine that breath is thick with wood smoke, rotting food, animal dung, and the smell of 100 people who haven't bathed in months. Welcome to a medieval town. You be here 10 seconds, and honestly, you're already gagging, and it only gets worse from here. There's a reason people back then carried little bunches of flowers everywhere they went. It wasn't decoration, it wasn't romance, it was survival. A desperate attempt to block out a smell so overwhelming, we can barely imagine it today. Medieval life stank, literally, and that was the least of your problems. Let's start with the streets, because in a medieval town, the street wasn't just for walking. It was also the sewer, the garbage dump, and the toilet. There was no plumbing, so when nature called, people used a bucket, a chamber pot. And when the bucket was full, they simply threw it out the window into the street, where you were walking. In some towns, they were at least supposed to shout a warning first, a polite little cry of, "Look out below," before drenching the street. The waste pooled in the streets, mixed with mud, animal dung, rotting food, and worse. Pigs roamed free, eating the garbage. And this sludge had a name. They called it the mire. You did not want to fall in the mire, so you flee indoors. Surely home is better. It is not. A peasant home was often a single dark room. A dirt floor, no chimney, so smoke from the fire just filled the room, slowly leaked out through the roof. Your eyes stung constantly. And you didn't live there alone. You shared it with your animals. The pigs, the chickens, sometimes a cow, brought inside at night for warmth and safety. Their mess stayed inside too. The floor was covered in rushes, dried reeds and straw that were supposed to keep things clean, but in some homes they were rarely fully changed. Underneath they could trap spilled food, grease, spit, animal droppings, and whatever else fell. A scholar named Erasmus complained that English floors hid, in his words, an ancient collection of grease, scraps, and worse. Though, to be fair to the Middle Ages, he was a notorious grump about England, and it probably wasn't quite as bad as he made out. And the bed? A straw mattress that was a paradise for fleas, lice, and bedbugs. You itched all night. Everyone did. It was just part of being alive. Now you might be thinking, surely they at least tried to stay clean, right? Well, sort of. Bathing a full body in water was rare, expensive, time-consuming, and many genuinely believed that hot water opened your pores and let diseases in. So washing could feel dangerous. Some people bathe a few times a year, some far less. And teeth. Toothbrushes as we know them didn't exist. People rubbed their teeth with a rough cloth or a frayed twig, or a paste of crushed herbs, ash, and ground shells. It scrubbed the surface and slowly wore the enamel away with it. For a real problem tooth, there were no dentists as we know them. You went to the barber. The same man who cut your hair also pulled your teeth, with no numbing, no gentleness, and pliers that had seen a lot of mouths. And for aches and illness, medieval medicine had its own logic. Feeling unwell? A physician might prescribe bloodletting, deliberately draining your blood to rebalance you, or leeches. The cure was sometimes worse than the disease. All right, you're filthy, itchy, and surrounded by smells. At least you can sit down to a nice meal. Let's talk about the water first. The water was often unsafe, drawn from the same rivers people dumped waste into. So many people drank weak ale or watered wine instead, even children, not to get drunk, just because it was safer than water. The food could be its own adventure. Bread was often gritty with stone dust from the grinding, wearing people's teeth down to stumps. Meat, with no refrigeration, was frequently on the turn. Heavily spiced, not for flavor, but to hide the taste of rot. And if a merchant wanted to cheat you, your bread might be bulked out with sawdust, chalk, or ground beans. Getting caught could mean public humiliation, but plenty got away with it. Now here's where it stops being gross and starts being deadly. All that filth in the streets, the shared beds, the rats drawn to the garbage, it wasn't just unpleasant. It was the perfect breeding ground for disease. In the 1300s, a plague we now call the Black Death swept through, carried by fleas on those rats. It killed as much as half of Europe. Whole villages simply emptied. The very thing that made medieval life so disgusting, the crowding, the filth, the rats, the complete lack of what we'd call sanitation, were exactly the things that made it so deadly. The smell wasn't just unpleasant. In a way, it was a warning nobody knew how to read. Here's what actually gets me about all of this. To the people living it, none of this was disgusting. It was just Tuesday. The smell, the fleas, the mire in the streets, it was simply the water they swam in. They didn't know anything else. And that's the strange thing about disgusting. It's not fixed. It's a moving line. 300 years from now, something you do every single day, something completely normal to you, might make people gag. The medieval world wasn't dirty because people were stupid or lazy. It was dirty because that was the world they were handed. They just did their best to live in it. Flowers pressed to their noses and all. If you'd last longer than 10 minutes in a medieval town, which, let's be honest, you wouldn't, subscribe. There's a lot more history down here they never taught you. And tell me in the comments which filthy era should we visit next.